Welcome back to our next video lecture on the next learning target 3.4 for Southeastern Biology. So this learning target is about enzymes, and by the end of this we hope that you can describe the role of enzymes and other proteins in biochemical functions. So to begin, we want you to remember and know that in your body, or really in any living organism, whether that be a plant, bacteria, or animals, including humans, we have chemical reactions that take place. So there are actually millions of chemical reactions that take place within every living organism to help keep them alive. What we have over here, this diagram on the right, is just one example of a common chemical reaction that takes place in just about every living thing that practices glycolysis. So this is the process of turning glucose, which is sugar, into pyruvate, which is a form that we can break down further into ATP. What we need to know right now is just understand that each one of these steps must take place in order to turn glucose into pyruvate. And each step along the way uses what's called an enzyme to make that happen. All right, so we have hexokinase, phosphohexosisomerase, phosphofructokinase, atolase. Okay, all the way down, all of these aces. So notice that almost all enzymes end in the suffix ase. So in this picture, all enzymes do end in the suffix ase. This is helpful to know if you come across an item on an ACT test or an AP biology test. If you see the word ase, you're dealing with an enzyme. I can pretty much guarantee it. At least when we're talking about science, if it ends in ase, it's an enzyme. Very few enzymes do not end in ase. There are a few, but if it ends in ase, it's probably an enzyme. Alright, so these chemical reactions, they happen all the time to keep you alive, and they must happen instantaneously because your body cannot wait. Alright, imagine you eat a piece of food or sugar or something and it goes to your stomach. It would take a very long time for that to break down naturally into the chemicals that you would need in order to turn it into energy. It could happen, but it would take a very long time. We're talking years. And you need that energy instantaneously. So your body has developed these proteins, and these proteins are called enzymes. An enzyme is a protein which speeds up chemical reactions without affecting the reaction. So, for example, let's pretend that this is a small piece of food. Here's your enzyme. What happens is the enzyme is built to handle that small piece of food and break it down into two pieces. All right, so you start off with the enzyme and the substrate. They come together to form a complex, and then they break the two apart. All right, so notice that in this chemical reaction, the two pieces were broken down, but they were not affected. They were not turned into something different. They just sped up the chemical reaction to break them apart. So an enzyme is a protein which speeds up chemical reactions without actually affecting the reaction. All it does is speed it up. So let's look at that in terms of something called activation energy. All right, so here's some new vocabulary. Already we've covered enzymes. That's a new vocabulary word. Here's another one, catalyst. So a catalyst, and this can be used actually outside of biology, but it comes from biology, and it means that enzymes lower the activation energy needed to start a reaction. Well, let's see, what is activation energy? So activation energy is the energy required to carry out a chemical reaction. So you have two chemicals here, A chemical and B chemical. Without the enzyme, you need to put in a lot of energy and time for that reaction to take place, but eventually if you put in enough energy, that reaction will take place, and then it will combine items A and B into a complex called AB. Now, and notice the net result is that it's exothermic because it releases energy overall, but it takes a lot of energy initially in order for that reaction to occur. But in the presence of an enzyme, we don't need as much energy to get over the hump. So if you look at this in terms of a hill, you're trying to roll a ball up a hill so that it can go down the hill, right? Ultimately, you want to get the ball down here. If you can do that by going up a smaller hill, you're going to go up the smaller hill. So this reaction is going to occur with the enzyme because it takes a lot less energy, and as a result, it happens a lot faster naturally. So enzymes are catalysts because they lower the activation energy needed to start a chemical reaction. The activation energy is the energy required to carry out a chemical reaction, so they lower the energy required to carry out the chemical reaction. All right, something else to know is that enzymes are very specific. All right, look at this. So we have a whole bunch of different chemicals, right? They're all just floating around in your body. We also have a bunch of different enzymes just floating around in your body. Well, the enzymes need to act on specific substrates. So notice these substrates will find, or the enzymes will find the substrates that fit each other. The squares won't go into the rounds, and the round ones won't go into the square ones. So obviously in real life, in our bodies, we don't have square and circular proteins, but they all have a very unique shape, and the enzymes are designed to fix them. We actually refer to this model as the lock and key model. So first of all, we should step back a minute and notice that we have another vocabulary word, and this is substrates. Substrates are molecules upon which an enzyme acts. So we mentioned this before, but we have the enzyme here, and it's going to act on the substrate. The enzyme is going to fit the substrate, or the substrate fits the enzyme like a key fits into a lock. This key fits into the lock, and then the enzyme breaks apart the substrate to form the products. So, enzyme and the substrate, they get together to make a complex. It breaks them apart because the activation energy is lowered, and you have your reaction. So that was quite a bit. We learned about enzymes, we learned about activation energy, we learned about substrates. All of these things are important key vocabulary that we need to commit to memory. Go back and rewatch this if you need to, and thank you for joining us.